So I have to go change my shirt through the power of editing. You may be a fragile man and not even know it. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. These, by the way, are quince. I have a quince tree outside and I make quince paste during the holidays and give it away as gifts. So while we are going through this video, I'll be chopping up and processing this here quince. The first thing in quince paste making is we have to remove all the hair from these. So if you're wondering why I'm fondling this fruit, that's why. I've been working on my own fragility for years, and every step towards more resilience and more anti-fragility has really allowed me to live a higher quality of life. So let's talk about how you can do the same. When you hear the word fragile, you might think of something like a glass shattering or a window shattering, and that is essentially what we're talking about. But a better way to think about it for humans is what derails us from the path that we're on. And what are we able to carry, resist, and overcome? For men, fragility often shows up in two separate places. One is going to be physical capability. Basically, how prepared is your body to say yes to life? That's a pretty straightforward one. But two, and this is the one that I see a lot of men have, is emotional regulation and the ability to properly respond to the situations that are in our lives. The goal in both these areas is to end up anti-fragile and resilient. So how can we do that? First, let's talk about the one that's a little easier to understand, which is physical fragility. Being physically fragile serves nobody. It doesn't serve the greater world, and it definitely doesn't serve yourself. You're more likely to get sick. You're more likely to get injured. You're eventually going to need help with basic tasks, and you need to outsource a lot of your physical activity to other people. Now, yes, of course, injury and disability is very, very real, but physical capacity is always going to be relative to the individual that you are. And you want to maximize your ability to navigate this world with competence. Every man has the opportunity to do this. Now, I want to specify that the goal with this isn't to get a six-pack abs, isn't to present in a certain way physically. Now, that might be important for some of you, but that is very different than being capable. There are plenty of people who look a certain way just because of their genetics, but have no ability to move through the world very effectively. The goal with all of this should be being able to say yes to life. Can I say yes to the things that are required of me as a man and as a father? Yes to throwing your children in the air. Yes to playing pickup basketball and not snapping your knee in half. And all of these things lead to saying yes to being an amazing grandparent and never needing to go to a nursing home. So why are some men fragile when it comes to their physicality? Well, we live in a day and age of comfort. Very rarely do we have roles where it's truly necessary for us to be exposed to constant physical stress. And unfortunately, that's the only way that we grow and gain capacity is through stress. Now think about it this way. Through most of human history, we would have had to have worked in a field in order to get our food, or run around and hunted for it, or foraged for it. And those types of activities would have kept us relatively physically capable. We would have been climbing and jumping and running and digging and bending and lifting quite organically. These days, we work at such a fraction of that due to the amount of convenience that we have. Now, unfortunately, what that means for us is we have to fake that inconvenience. We have to fake that stressor. And that's what working out is. Working out and exercise is a relatively new thing. It's fake stress. It's fake work. It's one of the reasons that it feels so terrible when you do it. You're not supposed to be randomly going out and just using your body. The times that it makes sense are when it's for a game or when it carries meaning, like you're planting food and you need to survive. Working out is one of the silliest things ever because it's fake stress. But we have to figure out a way that we can do this over and over again so that we gain capability. Now, a couple big basics with training. Something is better than nothing. Other things are better than some things. So if you go out and you walk a couple hours a day, awesome. If that's all you can do, great. You're not gaining that much capacity by doing so. You're not building that much resilience by doing that. But is it better than doing nothing? Absolutely. So what do we have to do? Well, in general, big, simple movements. Think the classic strength and conditioning, squatting, pressing, deadlifting, running, swimming, jumping, climbing. These kinds of things carry quite a large impact on our training. And there's many great programs out there. But you know what's more important than the program? Being consistent with it. So if you find something you love, I don't really care what it is. I don't care if it's Zumba, I don't care if it's powerlifting, I don't care if it's a jump rope program. If you find something you're loving and can stay consistent with, do that. And then when you want more, examine what it's giving you and see if there's another program that can do something better. But you gotta start doing something. You gotta be using your body. My recommendation is bigger, fuller range of motions. Find a community to be a part of. And I personally prefer things that are harder rather than easier, because those harder things allow you to live an easier life when you train harder. I deeply prefer CrossFit. I work for a company called Street Parking, and we do at-home CrossFit essentially. And there's a great big community associated with that, but you don't need to do that. It is, however, really, really effective at moving the needle in terms of human performance. So find something you can stick to and do it. And you owe it to the world to be not a liability, but an asset. And really important to this, remember, don't chase the mirror, chase what you're capable of. Let the mirror follow that. Now, this one is actually the real core of this video for me, and it's the more insidious fragility that I see often in the manhood and masculine space. In fact, a lot of really classically masculine men are actually quite fragile in this area, and they've masked their fragility in this area with becoming physically dominant as they move through it. I think physical dominance is an awesome thing, but I also think this emotional regulation is honestly the thing that's kind of harder for a lot of us to really sort, and a place of massive amounts of eternal growth that can allow us to live a higher quality of life and be better fathers, lovers, husbands, men. When our emotions run us, specifically anger or stress or anxiety, when things happen and we respond immediately, oftentimes there is a loss of control. And real strength in this area comes from the gap, or creating a gap between stimulus and response. So having a reaction versus having a response means a space in between them. A response is intentional, a reaction is unintentional. And that simple step is something that builds true strength as a father. So any given situation happens, we're driving down the road, we get cut off. There's going to be an initial reaction, and that reaction can be anger, it can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be sadness, it can be whatever. But then there's a response after that. And ideally, that initial reaction, in that reaction, you can give yourself some space. You react and you don't say anything, you don't do anything. You just have this feeling. But then you can choose a response after that. And that's true strength as a emotionally regulated father. A non-emotionally regulated father would have the reaction and then respond with the reaction. They would essentially use whatever feeling that they're feeling in that moment as their response. And there'd be a knee-jerk that happens outside that. And that's what we're looking to avoid, reaction. What we don't want is we don't want trigger and then have those mesh together. So how do we do that? It takes time, it takes effort. It takes stress, same thing in training, and recovery, building back from it. And recovery, in terms of the mind, is reflection and intention. We have to reflect on it afterwards and develop some sort of a tool to respond better the next time. Now we have to sit back and we have to go, okay, well, what happened? Well, something spilled in bed and I yelled. That's the literal part about what happened. But now what do I do about that? Well, was it that big a deal? It wasn't. And you have to have this conversation with yourself. You can have it out loud or you can write about it. It wasn't that big a deal. Well, why did I lose it? I was frustrated in the moment. So I expressed my frustration by yelling at my kid. I don't want to do that. So I can either not put myself in that situation again by trying to do the thing like not giving him water in bed, or when I do it the next time, I can be like, you know what? They might spill it. And if they spill it, I'm going to respond by just holding my tongue and seeing how they react to it. Or I'm going to give it to them, and when they spill it, I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to bite my tongue. I'm going to take a breath. And you develop a coping strategy for when a stressful situation happens. There's a pause in between that allows you to then choose your reaction based off of the scenario. But either way, it's taking control of the automatic response of there is this reaction you want to have, and then there is the actual response that you do have. That's powerful. That's growth. And that takes time and time again. And the people who can do that really, really well are the strongest men I know. They realize that nothing is truly that important unless it's like a safety issue, and they never respond in a way that's not appropriate to the scenario. And if they do, they then accept their responsibility there, they accept their failures in that, and learn how to do it differently in the future through that process. Just like training, the more times you do this, the better you get at it, and the stronger you'll get with it. But it's not easy. And we all start kind of fragile here, depending on our upbringing. Both of these fragilities are not ideal as a man, and our goal should be to get rid of them. On the side of physical fragility, we need to find a training program that stresses us and allows us to recover, and then makes us a better, more capable human. Seems pretty straightforward. Now, the challenges there come in staying consistent and all that kind of stuff, but that's for another video. We just need to do it. It's not a negotiable. On the other side, the emotional fragility, that's something we don't want to ever have, not long term, but we all have it to some degree when we first start as a father. So what we have to do is we just have to find ourselves in those situations and learn from those failures and those mistakes. But if we're never learning from it, we're not growing up, we're staying immature. So recognizing and accepting our own levels of immaturity will allow us to mature more. And when we mature, we have a better time in life. We are able to approach more situations with the ability to handle those situations and have more and more success. So here's my challenge to you. Are you physically more fragile? Are you emotionally more fragile? You probably have some fragility on both sides. So why don't you start some sort of training program that you think is awesome? You can do the one street parking that I do, or you can do whatever you want, but start something and see if you can get more capable. On the other side of things, let's start to see where we're more emotionally fragile and we're losing our cool when we shouldn't, and see if we can create that gap, that space, and that reflection to actually become more capable. Mature men carry both sides of this, physical strength and emotional strength. The goal is to become anti-fragile. And I made a whole video about anti-fragility up here and that concept of strength plus recovery and how to grow. So if you want to watch it, you can watch that. But you may be more fragile than you think. And when you work on that fragility, the person who benefits the most from it is you. But in turn, everyone in your life also benefits greatly.